All right, hey guys, I'm Kennedy. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. Let's start this off with a moment of silent meditation followed by the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, this is the HA New York State Unity Campout so far. It's been pretty amazing. I think so. I'd like to say so. We just started a new tradition where we're going to make meatloaf at every HA Unity Campout. Campout meatloaf. It's fabulous. It gets you sober. But yeah, this has been pretty amazing, It's awesome that, Rochester and Albany both came to show up, or Western District and Capital District, right? Something like that. We're still working out some kinks. We don't have 1, 2, and 3 recorded because we messed that up, but, there's always next year. It's great, growing. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing that we're growing like this, and I couldn't be more happy to see all these fabulous faces here. But yeah, so what we did was, just to recap, on Friday night, we had Long Island speakers speak on 1, 2, and 3. And then today is Saturday. This morning we had 2 Capital District speakers speak on 4 and 5. And now we're going to have 2 more from the Capital District area speak on 6, 7, 8, and 9, which is pretty amazing. We got a pretty cool setup going here, and we got 2 amazing speakers for you guys, so I hope you guys enjoy this as much as I will. And with that, the first speaker on these steps is going to be Megan. Give her a round of applause. There we go.
This is weird. On the rock. Hi guys, I'm Meg. I'm a heroin addict.
Hey.
Really grateful to be here. Grateful to be asked to speak at our first Empire State event, and grateful to be asked to speak on the meat of the steps. I feel like that's where the change really happened for me. In step 5 for me, in my part, my character defects jumped off the paper at me, my patterns that I was so blind to forever just were right in my face, and it was kind of like a harsh reality. It was these things that I never wanted to admit to myself, let alone have my sponsor sitting across the table from me, telling me about myself, and then writing this list out, and it was once I identified them and wrote them on paper, it was they were real, right? And once I knew them, I couldn't just stuff them back in my pocket and not be those things anymore. And that was really scary for me, but luckily, because of this program, we move on to step 6 and 7, and become willing to ask God to remove these defects of character, and then humbly ask him to. And for me, it wasn't, for most of us, it's not like this, I asked God to remove my defects of character and the clouds part, and I'm amazingly this, completely honest and perfect human being, right? When my experience was that my higher power presented me with opportunities to either act in the way I've always acted with my character defects, or to change and to do things differently. And, that was in terms of little things I'm a very impatient person, right? And so sitting in traffic, we were talking about that today, I am presented with an opportunity to be an impatient, angry crazy yelling bitch, or like I just accept it, right? And like not be impatient and like not react to that. And so that's like something small, but like those little things that I see those opportunities, and I choose to try to do the right thing. And you know, that goes with you know, being very jealous, being very competitive, you know, my ego, my pride, where there's situations that, you know, I have always been very competitive with my sister and very jealous of my sister, and kind of had this idea in my head until, you know, a couple years ago that like my mother could either she loved me or she loved my sister. Like it couldn't be both. And so it was like this constant competition for my mom's love. And you know, in doing this work, realizing that is not true, and that I don't need to constantly be in competition, and tell myself this story that, you know, that I'm not enough because, you know, I feel like my mom's loving my sister more today, and not putting my mom in that situation, right? And, you know, and then, so going on to like steps 8 and 9, you know, taking my 4th step list and all of these people that I was resentful at my entire life, and, you know, writing down the list of these people that I owed an amends to, and, you know, the bigger piece of the 8th step for me is the becoming willing to make amends to those people, right? Because I had people on the list that I put on there because I had to put on there because my sponsor told me I had to put them on there. But I was like, yeah, no, that's not happening. I'm not over that resentment, or, you know, they don't deserve to get an amends from me, right? And like for a long time, a lot of people on my list, I wasn't willing to make that amends. And, you know, just by coming back and like taking other women through the steps and like talking to my sponsor about it, like, thank God, like I have become willing to make amends to everyone on my 8th step list. And, you know, I was so scared to make a lot of my amends, right? Like, so there's these things that I did to people that I thought I will never tell anyone, right? I will take this to my grave. And then in the fourth and 5th step, I admitted them to someone. And, you know, for a lot of it, my sponsor was like, okay, we all did that. You know, you're not special. And so that kind of took a little bit of power away from it. But that didn't mean that I would ever sit across from that person and then tell them that I did it and try to make it right. And, you know, to kind of grow in this and get to that point where I'm willing to do that is a freaking miracle, right? And, you know, I thought for my mom, for example, like, I don't want to admit all these things to my mom. It's just going to upset her more, and like all these justifications of why I should probably leave that out, and I don't need to tell her that, and this is just going to upset her. And, you know, my sponsor would tell me, like, one, we need to clear our side of the street, right? Like, that's why we're doing these. But, you know, there's so many things that I did to my mom, but there's so many things that she thinks I may have done, and maybe I didn't. And so, like, by putting all of this down on paper and making this amends to her, like, showing her that she can trust me again, you know, those things, like she can believe me that I did these things that I said that I did, and anything else she had in her head, like she can just like be at peace with it, right? And and the thing is, most of the stuff she knew anyway, right? Like we think that people don't know the things that we did to them, and most of them did. And and then like not only like the money that I stole from my mom, but the position I did put her in by being a competitive, jealous, insecure little girl, like there was so much more to the amends than just, this is the money I stole from you, and here's a check for that. And I have my sister, who I said, I don't have a great relationship with, and like she was number one on my amends list, right? Like my sister has been someone that I have looked up to my whole life and longed for her love and acceptance my whole life, and have never gotten it. And with almost 6 years sober, she still does not talk to me today for the damage that I did while I was out there. But like, I don't need her love and acceptance today, and like that's because of like the work that I've done in this program. And when I was ready to make an amends to her and I reached out, she wasn't willing to hear it. So I sent a letter that was like 10 pages long of all these things that I did to her, and all these things that I needed to make right and I needed to admit to, and I sent a check with that. And for the last 3 years, I've sent a check every month, and she cashes it. And like for me, that is her own way of like accepting my amends. And for me today, like that is enough, right? And and then then there's like other people who, my mom has been on this journey of recovery with me, right? So she's seen me grow in this program. And so making an amends to her was very difficult, but at the same time, she's seen my progress in this program. And so, to sit in front of her, it was so powerful and so freeing for me. But like to the uncle who I see once every 5 years that I stole $250 with when he was staying at my mom's house, that was really difficult for me to sit across that table and say, hey, I really don't know you, but I stole this money from you. And, in this place that you should have felt safe, and, through this tornado of destruction that I was, and this selfishness and self-centeredness, like I did not care that I took all of the cash out of your wallet while you were sleeping, and here's a check, to make that right. That was really scary for me, right? So like it's, but like each time, like I walk out of there and I just feel so free, right? These things that I was so ashamed of, and just to be able to admit it and then try to right my wrong, right? Because like it's so much more than just saying I'm sorry, and and then there's things, part of my story is burglarizing houses for a couple months, and I did end up getting arrested and charged with burglary for one of the houses. And so, I had to pay restitution for that, and I had to do jail time and all that. But, there's a whole slew of other houses that I hit that, I don't think it would be best for me at this time in my recovery and my life to go knocking on people's doors and saying, I stole $7,000 in gold from your house, right? I'm not going to be able to be of any service sitting in a jail cell. And so, it's taken me a long time to like figure out like creative ways to make amends for things like that. You know, the sweatshirt I stole from Walmart. I'm not going to go to the customer service counter and say, here's $29.99 for the sweatshirt I stole. Instead, I'm going to go buy a sweatshirt and give it to a homeless woman on Lark Street where I live, right? And like, for me, that makes it right. And that's what it's about, is like being at peace with making right, like, these things that I did in any way that like works for me, right? It's all about like how it works for us. And so, like, for robbing these houses in Catskill where I was running, you know, I just recently decided to start an HA meeting in Catskill, right? Like, for these people that may be doing the same thing that I was doing and, like, making the streets of Catskill unsafe, like, I want to bring hope there, right? Like, this hope that you guys have given me. And bring a meeting and like let them know, like, this is where I was, and like this is like I've been where you are at, and like this is what we can do to get better. And that feels really good, because when I drive by those houses that I robbed, I don't want to be overwhelmed with shame anymore, right? Like, I want to be able to walk with my head held high, and that's what like making these amends does for me, is like I don't have to walk around Catskill or Walmart or like anywhere and feel ashamed anymore. And you know, we're just like so blessed to have like these tools, right? You know, because like for me, like for this heroin addict, like my head can tell me all sorts of horrible things, right? Like, my head is a war zone that tells me that I am a piece of shit, and like your sister shouldn't talk to you because you know, this is the shit that you've done to her. And like, but because of you know, these steps in particular, like I know that that's not true, and I can do everything I can to like make right what I did and move forward from that. So that's all I have. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan. That was awesome. And next we have Brian from the same area.
Thanks, Kennedy. Hey guys, I'm Brian. I'm a heroin addict. So I have a sobriety date. It's April 24th, 2012. I have a sponsor. His name is Eric. We work steps out of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm very blessed to have other men who asked me to take them through the book Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a home group. It's the No Choice group of Heroin Anonymous in Saratoga, New York. We meet on Saturdays and Sundays. If you're ever in Saratoga, come check us out. I have service commitments at that meeting. I have service commitments at the district level, in the Capital District, and I'm the HA World Service delegate for our area. As a result of those things, I've had an experience with a power greater than myself that has relieved me of the obsession to do dope. And for that, I'm super grateful. So I always start with that because that's the only facts. Well, I'm going to read this book in a minute. But besides that, that's the only facts you're going to hear out of my mouth tonight. Like, that's how I got sober. That's how I stay sober. That's how my sponsor got sober. That's how he stays sober, you know, and so on down the line. The rest is just my opinion of my experience with this program. So if you don't like it, it's just an opinion. Right. The other thing I always start with is I fucking love heroin. The absolute best idea I've ever had for my life is taking a handful of Xanax, putting meth and dope in a rig, and getting weird, you know? I like to do so in my closet. You know, just like the cracked open a little bit, watching TV, keeping the shadow people at bay, you know? It's the best I could do, right? Like, I was a kid and I had a lot of ideas and thoughts about what my life would be like, but that was the absolute best I could do. And I like, so that being said, I love heroin. I'm definitely a heroin addict. I qualify, but I suffer from the disease of alcoholism. And it's very important to me to understand what that is, right? So again, I could have all kinds of thoughts and ideas for my life, and I could tell you that I'm going to go home from work on Friday with my paycheck, and I'm going to go to the bar and I'm going to have 1 or 2 drinks and blow off some steam, and then I'm going to go home and I'm going to continue to live my life. And I'm going to be a son, I'm going to be an employee, I'm going to be a brother, and all those things. And I meant it when I said that, you know. Before I had that first drink, if you put me on a lie detector test and asked me my intentions for the night, you know, I would have passed when I told you those things. But the first part of this disease is when I have that one, I'm no longer in control. You know, it takes over. I'm just a spectator for the rest of it, you know. And wherever that's going to take me, like, that's going to take me. And if that were the only problem, that wouldn't be a big problem. I just would never, ever put the first one in, right? Like, if I'm allergic to lobster, I would just never eat lobster again. But the second part of this disease, the part that this book tells me how to deal with, is knowing that, you know, when I do those things, I'm gone. That knowing that I'm probably going to go to jail, that I'm going to lose my job, that I'm going to get kicked out of my house. I become so insane that I figure out a way, like I figure out in my head, like, oh, if I just do it like this way, you know, maybe those bad things won't happen again. And I put that first one in again. So it's really important to me to understand that what disease I suffer from, because if I don't know what I suffer from, I have absolutely no idea of how to fix it, right? So Alcoholics Anonymous figured that out for me, and I'm very grateful for that. And they also gave me this book, which helps me live a life. So step 6 and 7. I'm going to read this real quick. If we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness to be indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can he now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something, we will not let go. We ask God to help us be willing. When ready, we say something like this: My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good or bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. We have then completed step 6. No, I'm good. Thanks. Right, so we're going to talk about God. Sorry if that pisses people off, but we're going to. If you don't believe in a power greater than yourself, you obviously have not looked around here. Right, there's 20 or so heroin addicts who none of us live anywhere near where we're at right now. And I don't know about what you guys did today, but I got out of bed today. I got in a car. I went with my wife and we got breakfast. We picked up a couple guys and we drove 2 hours down here. I had toll money to get here. We had gas in our car. Right, I have like clothes on my back. My wallet has a credit card in it. Like, that doesn't happen for a guy like me. If there was not a power greater than myself, there's no fucking way. I have a car. I have a wife. I wake up in a bed. You know, like, none of these things are possible for a guy like me. But because of a power greater than myself, you know, these things happen. Step 6, right? It's one paragraph in the book. So the first thing that I believe about step 6, right? I think all the steps I absolutely cannot complete. There's no I did step 6. There's no I did step 1. I think step 6 and 7, though, that is applicable probably more than anything, any of them. Right, but so what step 6 looked like for me, I did a 5th step. I admitted some objectionable shit to my sponsor. He pointed out what was real, and, you know, we made a list, and, you know, that was it. I wrote down the things that he said that were my character defects, and we didn't spend a lot of time on it. He then told me to remember the 7th step prayer, and, you know, we were going to ask God to remove these, and I was like, dude, like, you know, like, we spent like a week on the other steps, like, shouldn't we like really like get down and dirty, like really understand everyone, maybe go see like a psychologist, and like, you know, like I wanted to drag my feet on it because I knew what was coming up behind 6 and 7, and he didn't allow that to happen. You know, I remembered the prayer, I said the prayer, and, you know, I got to step 8, because what happens with, like, right, I have all these defects, and just like any other problem I have in life, there's absolutely no way that I'm going to think my way through that problem. Sitting in my bedroom with a notebook, trying to figure out step 7, it's not going to do any good. I can't think my way out of selfishness and self-centeredness. That book tells me that I can't do that. So how do I get out of selfishness, self-centeredness, lying, laziness, all these defects I got? I fucking do step 8, because what happens in steps 8 and 9 is a crash course of every one of my defects of character, right? Like every time I'm going to make an amends, I'm looking at my defects in action. I look at what my defects do to other human beings' lives. And so the only way to truly face them is the action of facing them and being rid of them, And that's what it looked like at the beginning. I couldn't really fathom a lot more. I would say the prayer. I would individually list the things that were objectionable. And, I went out and did step 8. And right at step 8, I made a list again. Step 8, that's like the shit that made me want to leave the first meeting I ever walked into. I read that on the wall and I was like, nah, you don't know the shit I did, man. I'm not going to jail for this. Heroin's inconvenient, but I'm not in prison right now. So I can't do that. But something happened in step 5, right? Just as the book promises, I started having a spiritual experience. And when I got to step 8, I was on fire, and I just wanted, this shit was working and I wanted to make it keep working. And what happened when I made that list and I became ready to make amends is not what I thought step 8 would look like. Through the act of doing that, I forgave the human being that I had to make amends to, right? Because I made up all these things in my head of why I did this to this person. They wronged me here, they screwed me here, so I get to fucking steal all their pills and, murder their best friend or whatever that looks like. I just, I justified everything I did. But what had to happen before I could forgive them was I had to forgive myself for the shit I put them through. I can't forgive anyone else until I forgive myself. So that's what started to happen at step 8. And by the time I actually went and looked these people in the eye, I realized that I was suffering from a disease that was beyond my mental control. I had enough time sober that I knew I would not do that if I was of right mind, If I wasn't suffering from this disease, there's no way that I would do those things because I don't do those things today. This is not something I do, try to ruin the lives of other people. So I get there and I forgive myself. And, I just want to be rid of all those things. So I go and I start making amends. And I really had a bad idea of what step 8 would look like in practicality before I started doing it. But holy shit, was I wrong about step 9. Like I said, that's the reason I didn't want to do this program. There's no way I could admit this stuff. And by the time I got to step 9, I couldn't wait to get there and start making these things right. And the beauty in my life that started with making amends is I could sit here and I could tell you about it for the next 6.5 hours and I wouldn't be able to do I'm not going to speak for 6.5 hours, so just don't freak out. But I just couldn't ever do it justice. Right, so I had this one. I'm just going to share 2 amends stories with you, and I think that, if I stick to the facts, it'll probably do better than me trying to explain it. So, when I was a heroin addict, I'm still a heroin addict, but I was using heroin on a daily basis. I did a lot of wrong things. And one thing that really stuck out to me was I had this friend that I grew up with when I was 12 years old. Her house was next to my mom's house, and we're really good friends. And we grew up with each other. I introduced her to a couple of her boyfriends. We were just always there. We loved to do drugs. That was a big common bond. We both liked to go to Fish and Dead shows, so that was cool. And just right? Like years of friendship. And when she was like, when I went to college, she got mixed up in shooting cocaine and shooting heroin. And she moved to Florida for rehab and then stayed in like a sober environment. And, fast forward. So I didn't see her from then on. And then like fast forward, I'm like 34 years old. Really gnarly dope habit. Living with my mom like a good junkie does. And, my mom was like barking in my ear or something, telling me to get a job or like not be a scumbag. And I didn't want to hear it. So I like left the house and I went out and I like walked around the court by my house. And I ended up bumping into this girl that I grew up with. She had come back to where I lived in Clifton Park. And she had her tonsils out and they'd given her Vicodin. She had been sober for a while, but they gave her Vicodin for the surgery and she was getting into it. And so she sees me on the street and she sees my arms and she's like, I know what's going on there. Can you get me any? And I was like, no, like that's not that's not me. Like I knew you went and got sober. Like I wasn't loving my life, so I didn't want to like inflict that on anyone else or be any part of that. And I really meant it, that I wasn't going to get her any. And the next day, I come home with a bundle and no rigs. And the dirty rigs wouldn't work. I couldn't, they wouldn't either go through my skin or I couldn't even pull them back. I was like, washing them, running under hot water, it wasn't going. So I just figured, you know what? Really wish this girl doesn't do dope again, but I really need some fucking rigs, And so I call her up and say, yo, if you go get a pack of rigs, I'll give you some dope. So, she does. And I tell her to take a half a bag that you haven't done it in a while. That'll be good. But I didn't really pay attention. I started fixing myself. She shot a bag and fell out pretty hard. I just remember turning around and just seeing like a crumbled mess on the floor. Just looked like a pile of bones just laying there. And, there's things I wanted to do at that moment, but I was still sober. So the first thing I did was, I finished fixing and I got high. And then when I was good, not sick anymore, I finally went over and checked for her pulse. And it was there a little bit, and it didn't look good though. And I had no idea how to bring her back. I had no idea what to do. But I absolutely knew I could not call 911 because I had a lot of dope, I had a lot of rigs everywhere, I had other drugs going on, and I really would like this girl who I grew up with not to die, but, I can't do that. And luckily she didn't die. She came to, but that has absolutely nothing to do with me, right? Like, I was perfectly willing to let her die if that was going to stand in the way of me getting loaded. And, so that sucks. So I finally, I go to rehab, I get sober, I start doing some steps, and I get to step 9. And I really, really want to find this girl. I need to admit what I did. This one, really weighed on my conscience. So I really wanted to do it, selfishly wanted to do it. I wanted to be like, hey, I did this, but I'm fucking awesome now. I'm super sober, and you need to forgive me. And, luckily, I couldn't find her when I was in that mind frame. And, she, so finally, I'm looking for her for, good, 6 or 7 months. I can't find her. And all of a sudden, she just pops up on Facebook. And what had happened the past couple months before that changed in my life was I ran into this kid, Bobby, and we were talking about how we're dope fiends in AA, and we didn't really feel that great about it. Sometimes, we wanted to talk about being sick and not being able to poop for 3 weeks and, all the fun that we do. So we heard about Heroin Anonymous in San Diego. I was living in California at the time, but I couldn't drive. He couldn't drive. So we were like, hey, let's just start our own meeting of Heroin Anonymous. So we did that. And that went really well. And we started another meeting of Heroin Anonymous in that area. And that was going really well. So then after that, she finally pops up on Facebook. And, I think at this point, I started this couple meetings, but probably just to be cool. You know, like I don't think I was trying to help people. Maybe I was. That was like part of it, but like I wanted to be the cool guy, you know, because being cool in an anonymous program is like a really good thing. And, you know, so anyway, we did it. And, you know, it doesn't really matter our intentions. It matters the action, I think. So couple meetings were going really good. There's like 50 to 100 people showing up every night. And all of a sudden this girl shows up on Facebook. And I said, yo, like, I did some stuff. Like, I said, actually, I just saw her on Facebook. It was like, hey, I need to talk to you. Can I give you a call? And so she said, yes. She gave me her number. I gave her a call. And I admitted that, you know, like when she was dying, the first thought that I had was to shoot up. And I wasn't going to call 911. She was like, that sucks. You kind of suck. What are you doing now with your life? And I told her about moving to California. I told her about getting sober and working some steps, and how my friend Bobby and I had started a Heroin Anonymous meeting or two. And she started crying, and she was just like, that's it. That's the amends. Like, that's what you do today. So keep doing that. It's the best of your ability. Just keep doing that. And, right, so amends are binding, right? Like, if I'm willing to go to that person and admit these wrongs, whatever they say I can do to make it right, like, it's not an apology. I have to change my action. So I agreed that I would keep doing that, and I have, you know, stayed true to that promise. And what has come in my life because of that is fucking unbelievable. You know, it gives me purpose. It gives, you know, like, I don't know. My life has exploded in ways that I never thought could ever happen for a guy like me. And it has absolutely nothing to do with Brian. It has absolutely everything to do with Heroin Anonymous and the people in it. Right. And that's for making an amends, you know? Right. That's what happens in the amends. Just those things that we're just dreading and just don't ever want to do, when we face it and we be rid of that shit, our life changes, and usually in a beautiful way. Sometimes people tell you to fuck you, but like, even those, I get so much freedom from him saying, fuck you, I don't want to talk to you, because I know that I was willing to do whatever it took to make that right. And sometimes if he says, I don't want to talk to you, that's how I make that right, is I don't fucking talk to him anymore, you know? So, well, I'm going to close with this. So the other, another amends I had was, this is like the one, you know, like, I think we all have this on our 4-step. The one thing we don't want to admit to, like, ourselves, to God, to, and definitely not a fucking other human being. Like, I couldn't sleep for like 3 days before I wrote my 4-step because I knew I had to write this down and I couldn't do it. And what that was I had lied to my family for 8 to 9 years about having multiple sclerosis. I did not have multiple sclerosis. A doctor kind of co-signed me having multiple sclerosis. Well, he put it in my head, and then when he did the test and I didn't have it, he'd given me so many pills when he thought I had it that I was like, well, I fucking have it because I really like these pills. So I went to the next doctor and I told him I have multiple sclerosis, give me the pills. And he did, and then it was in my file, and then like I had to tell my family because it got me pity and money and, you know, just all that stuff. Right, so I never wanted to admit that. And I didn't want to admit it to my sponsor, Doug. There's no way in hell I ever want to admit that to my mother, you know? So I hung on this one for a while. It was about 2 years sober. I was finally allowed to move back to the state of New York from California. And I got off the plane and I fucking knew I had to do it, right? I knew that was like the first thing I had to do. And I kind of balked a little bit. I waited like a day, and I'm driving in a car with my sister, and she looked at me. She's like, so how's the MS doing? Fuck. So I had to say, you know, Lori, I'm really sorry. I lied about that. You know, I do not have multiple sclerosis. And then I had I knew that I couldn't postpone anymore. And I went to my mom that same day, and we went out to lunch, and I told her, and right, so I told my mom that I had this, and like she just started crying like happy tears because I wasn't going to end up in a wheelchair and that like when she passed, she wouldn't have to worry about who was going to take care of me, you know? And so I just felt like I got off easy. Like, how do you not, like, hit me? Like, just punch me. Come on. And so I told her that after she was just so happy. And I was like, you know, like, it was really fucked up. Like, please just hit me, do something. And she looked at me and she started crying. And she's like, you know, Brian, I'm so proud of the man you have become and the man you continue to be. There's no way I can be mad at you. And I started crying, you know, and like, right, I'm the guy that made up the lie about having multiple sclerosis. I'm not the guy that became a man that would make my mom proud, you know? But she said, like, just keep doing what you're doing. And, like, a lot of us, I thought if I heard just keep doing what you were doing, that would be like, yeah, I got off, you know, like I got off scot-free. I don't really have to do anything. But absolutely not with this one. Like, I needed to keep doing what I was doing. And what has happened since has been unbelievable. For 34 years, I had no idea what it meant to be a son. You know, I would take a lot from my mom, and I would steal everything I possibly could from her. If it was money or pills or like peace of mind or safety or whatever the fuck it was, I would steal it from her. So I could say I was a son, but that word meant absolutely fucking nothing to me. But when I came home and I made that amends, you know, what happened was I started becoming a son. And, you know, I show up for my mom today. Sometimes it's like really stupid. I show up and I like take out her garbage. Sometimes it's really important. I like take her to the doctor's office, you know. And we built a relationship, and it's just, right? Like, I'm literally like, it sounds stupid, but like sometimes I'll be on my way to my mom's house, driving 10 minutes out of my way to take out this woman's garbage because she's like 70 and she doesn't get around too well. And I start crying because I just can't fucking believe that Heroin Anonymous has allowed me to get a life where I can drive over to my mom's house and take out her garbage for her when she needs me. And, you know, that's what Step 9 has meant to me. I'm Brian. I'm a heroin addict.
All right. Thank you to both of you. You both were amazing. And I guess we can close with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.